and welcome to the Dutch Mentor as we continue our series, Keys to Success. Today, I'm joined by Pam Obrien, who's an executive with the Sodeso Corporation. I've known Pam for, probably over 10 years now through Healthcare Leaders of New York. I've always admired her tenacity, her flexibility, agility as a standout, and she has really shown all of us that through hard work and dedication, you can certainly develop yourself into an executive leader and climb that proverbial career ladder. So, Pam, welcome to the show. And my first opening question, as always, is that what are your keys to success?
Thank you, Walter, and happy to be here. And as you can see, I'm mobile myself in my car, just the way the world goes. So probably my first key to success is flexibility, and this is a prime example. The world is changing constantly, and we need to be able to flex to that and make sure that we're meeting a need, and that will help in that growth and career ladder that we talked about. I think personally, I'm a perpetual learner. So college, recently I went back and got my MHA, Masters of Healthcare Administration, just because of the networking groups I was in with HLNY, and just learning new things and really being interested in what goes on. And more than just the formal education piece, it's just learning from the people around you, learning about new processes, learning what we need to do to adapt in this world. I think the next thing is really that servant leadership style that I have. Some people think when they climb the ladder, they get to the top and they get to sit in this ivory tower chair and they don't really have to work hard and they just point fingers and things happen. But you're going to get a lot more out of life, fulfillment of your job, and loyalty if you work with that servant leadership style, which really talks about, we're here for a purpose and we stay focused on the purpose regardless of your role. I know in my operations, if my team didn't do their job, I wouldn't be successful. So I am thankful for my team and thankful for that. And always remember those little folks, because they're always going to be the person that are going to help you out. They're going to be the person that are going to be you in a few years, So that's a key thing. And I think people tend to forget that. And then I think the biggest part in being a female, I've been in this field for, 40 years. And, glass ceilings were a challenge and so on. But, keep your ears and eyes open, listen and learn. And sometimes the opportunities are right in front of you and you don't even know that they're there because you're not really understanding what the need is. So I think putting all of that stuff together really helps you to understand what opportunities are there. What skills did I need to grow to be where I am today? So outside of my job, I would volunteer to help. I would do tasks that weren't my tasks, just to kind of learn full circle how everything works together like a big machine, right? I do my piece, you do your piece. If I learn your piece, that now makes me more valuable to my boss, which then helps me to grow that career ladder as well. And I think one of the other things within reason is to take chances. So sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to travel. I don't want to, change jobs. It's comfortable here. So it's sometimes very good to take chances, not feel like, just if it's outside of the scope and your comfort level, if you don't take those chances, sometimes you never know what you really want out of life. So those would probably be my really high keys of success, where I got to where I am today.
Excellent. So it's funny is that I think that the fire siren in the background is trying to highlight your last point about taking chances, right? I call that, we go out and play in the street. I want to go take a step back. So, Sodeso and certainly your career has been in support services. And if you think about healthcare, too often, and for all the wrong reasons, people in the support services are somewhat looked down upon by others in the organization, like doctors, nurses, and technical staff. But, like we say, if we don't have a clean hospital, there is no patient care. Right? We cannot survive. Infection prevention all starts and finishes with support personnel, as well as the meals that are being served. So motivating your staff is really, really important for you to success of any hospital healthcare institution. Can you tell me a little bit about your approach with your team today, or even when you started off as a team leader, or even before that, on how to motivate and inspire those who are not always looked upon as the most valuable players, which in my book is completely wrong, but we have to face reality, and how can we best manage that?
Absolutely. I think one of the valuable lessons I learned early on in my career is I was that person. I was at the bottom of the food chain. I was 6 months away from graduating from college and I was washing dishes, right? So you understand that cog in the machine and how everything works. So fast forward to today, I look at those folks thinking of how I felt and how I was treated. And I make sure I make it a point to make sure that I'm not that person, right? I want them to feel that their job is important. I recognize when they do things well. At a VP level, I will talk to the frontline staff when I go into my buildings. I will take their calls. We have a promise of respect and fair treatment so they can escalate concerns that they have. I will pick up the phone and talk to frontline associates. So I never think that I'm too high above them or too much better than they are. If somebody gets hurt on the job, I have 1,600 employees. I call them to make sure they're okay. So it might not happen immediately, but from that point, they know that somebody's on their side and looking out for them. And I think that makes a difference, builds that loyalty and trust. I always say that it takes a special kind of person to work in healthcare. You got to have that heart-mind connection. And a lot of people just like, oh, you need the paycheck. And when they see a shiny penny over there, they change jobs real quick. But, if they have the passion to be in healthcare, I think it's my job to make sure that they feel respected and wanted and needed. So I lead by example. That's another thing. If I go into an operation and they're shorthanded, I will jump right in and help out where I can, work side by side with them. And I don't say I go there for that purpose, but if there's an urgent need, I don't think it's beneath me to help. I think that also builds that trust and relationship. Recognition for a job well done. If somebody does a really great thing, I like to point it out and thank them right on the spot. I don't need to, wait a week until we have a meeting. And I think that too makes folks feel really good about what they do. And then as far as filling that pipeline or that funnel, I look for that boiling stew. You know how like little bubbles start on the bottom and as they get bigger to the top, they explode. And that's my talent. I want that explosive talent. So we start looking for clues when they first start the job, they get their feet wet. We have what we call 2+2 conversations with all of our staff frontline, 2 things they do well, 2 things that they would like to work on in their career. And that kind of keeps them engaged and involved with us. The next time quarterly 2+2 meeting happens. So what do we do? What can I do to support you to get to your aspirations and grow your career? Then we look for, we have a lot of training platforms inside of Sodeso. So we get them signed up for training classes. So let's say somebody wants to be a dietitian or somebody wants to be a manager. We get them involved in some leadership training, communication training, and then we get them into the certified dietary manager program. So inside of a year, we had somebody making $10 an hour that could be making management salary, $50,000 a year or more. And some of these folks just have a GED. So I think from that perspective, we have the talent, but because it's not on paper as being highly educated, we tend to overlook them. But there's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them are really loyal and smart and dedicated to do it. So we have these growth discussions and talk about opportunities frequently, not just once a year when they get their evaluation. I think those are really how I like to fill the funnel. And then, of course, with COVID, we have a lot of challenges too. So we've done a lot of extraordinary things. I'm sure just the rest of the world has done it as well. But we're looking at sign-on bonuses. We're looking at hero pay. We're looking at stretch assignment pay. So if somebody works out of their job description or goes between 2 different buildings, because I have 70 buildings, if we're staffed here and need help there and they move, we give them $75 plus their wages. So, we do different things to try and encourage people and recognize them financially. We have a day of recognition for our team. So everybody gets a little certificate that I sign at the bottom of, just to thank them. We have what we call CARES Awards. And every quarter we identify people that have gone above and beyond the call of duty, and they get like a little trophy with a $25 gift card. Oop, hold on. That's the sirens.
But that shows you again the importance, right on cue about the reward and recognition, right?
Right, absolutely. So all these things we do to make people feel like they want to come to work and stay, right? We've struggled just like everybody else. These factories are opening up. They're paying $15 an hour. Businesses are now trying to reopen and they can't find staff, so they're giving ridiculous sign-on bonuses. And we're losing a lot of our staff to that type of stuff. But again, I think that's really because they weren't committed to the mission. So really trying to find folks with that heart-mind connection and the passion to help others those are the folks that are going to stay and grow. Those are the ones we want to identify. Those are the ones we want to help to promote to a better, a higher level in the organization, maybe a better quality of life for them.
Yeah, I think that you touch on that heart and mind, right? For me, it just really the four P's. It is the passion, purpose, the people, and then the process, right? If we can connect those four things with folks, they're more likely to stay and continue to develop. I like your 2+2 strategy. It is very much part of what I talk about is, we do a box 9 assessment and of seeing, from a high performing, high motivated, status of where you are in the organization and supported by an individual development plan. I think as leaders, it is our core responsibility is to motivate, to inspire, to be responsible. But it is about identifying that next level leader and start working on that. And that's part of the series that I've the keys to success is not for us to talk about why we are successful. It's really about sharing to those people who want to climb their career ladder on how to get there. So I know that we have spoken about leadership training at Sodeso and the commitment that the company has made to continue to developing as part of keeping people right, reducing turnover. How do you position yourself as a mentor to people in the organization, but also be their executive leader at the same time? How do you manage that?
Sure. Great question. So we have formal mentoring programs, we have informal mentoring programs. And then, kind of our punchline inside is that, I'm your boss, I'm not your mentor, because if there's a direct line of supervision, it's my job to develop you. So it's not really a mentoring tool. It's part of my responsibility to develop my team and my staff. But we do have a formal mentoring program where folks are matched, usually cross-divisionally, because we have healthcare, like I'm in the senior division of our healthcare. We have acute care. We have corporate services, which might be like banks and things of that sort. We have schools, K through 12. We have colleges and universities. So we have different divisions. We have sports and leisure. In fact, we're doing all the food service for the Olympics coming up soon. So we do a bunch of different things. We have a company called Centerplate, which is now all of our ballparks and entertainment venues. So we cross-divisionally have somebody from, let's say, sports and leisure, and I might mentor them. So I get a different perspective, but my job is to kind of listen to them, understand where they want to go in their career, and kind of give advice to them, just work through projects. It's definitely mentee driven. So it's not driven by me as a mentor. That mentee has to set up our calls. They're usually once a month for 45 minutes. We talk about what growth they worked on the last month, where they're going. And just from my experience, talk about, well, what if you did it this way? Kind of offering advice and guidance, and just a different frame of reference for them so that they can see how it is at least 2 levels above them in a different division, and just things that worked and didn't work, and just offer suggestions. So that's more of our formal mentorship, where you're actually matched by the company. And then we have an informal mentorship where we have like this portal that you can go to. And if I'm looking to, say, grow my career in whatever, I would go in and put my interest where I lack, where I think I need to develop. And the website will match me with somebody who's there and is willing to take me on as an informal mentor. So I'm actually doing it now with a CEO of our remote sites division. So that's like our oil tankers out in the middle of the ocean. So we manage the food and cleaning on those as well. So that's who my mentee is. So you're never too far in the organization, not my mentor, rather, I'm her mentee. So you're never too far in the organization not to be mentored. So I want to say that as well.
Yeah, no, I think it is paramount. Mentoring and being a mentee is part of growth and development, right? I've had the same mentor for probably about 10 years now. I've diversified over time by having different inputs. But if one conversation I look forward to is usually my check-in with him, because if anything, he will tell me what I need to hear from time. Right? He can ask good, challenging questions, and it's not about a friendship per se. It's really about a moment of honesty and reflection, which can be very, very, very powerful. That's good. One of the things that in healthcare obviously is unique, that the turnover rate is really high. So you talked a little bit about all these supportive programs. How have you managed for yourself to limit turnover? Because turnover obviously has a far-reaching implication both on cost and efficiency itself. Any magical words you have there for the emerging leader whose responsibility is to manage the front line and it's a direct reflection on performance, their individualized turnover rates within their teams.
Absolutely. Prior to COVID, my turnover rate was very low, maybe 15%, which is unusual.
Yeah.
I think in the senior care environment, it's a little bit more touchy feely, and there's that job satisfaction piece. And then COVID hit, and then I've had only like a 15% retention. And it's really folks afraid to come to work, folks where doctors said you can't come to work, people that were close to retirement ended up retiring. Now we have this unemployment phenomenon, which is killing us. So, all these things that I talked about, and it really comes down to treat people how you'd like to be treated. So again, servant mentality doesn't matter how far up the food chain you are. People remember kind acts, and they don't quit their jobs, they quit their bosses. I know we've all heard that. So be that boss that people want to work for, right? So if you want to retain talent, attract and retain them, then make yourself the employer of choice. Make yourself accommodatable or flexible to work with somebody within reason. Make sure you would treat them the way that you'd want to be treated. Be fair, be open, be honest. People don't want you to lie to them either, just to make them feel good. They want honesty. They want honest feedback and constructive criticism. Don't beat people up. We all have stuff, whether it's healthcare issues, family issues, pet. I can't tell you how many times this person's dog died 3 times, but that affects the whole person, right? So you have to really look at everybody from a point of compassion, like what can I do to help, to the point that it doesn't disrupt the operation. So just self that report to me, but would come to me with the situation and say, well, put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel? How would you want to be treated? Because they get very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like angry and judgmental, and you can't be that way. You got to understand that they're all human beings. And they all have needs. And they all have problems. So, or certain situations, I shouldn't call it problems, but they have situations they need to deal with. Recalling somebody didn't come to work and the manager wanted to fire them. Turns out that they were caring for a sick parent who had passed away, and the kids still came to work. So, you have to know them as a whole person if you want them to be engaged in the operation. And then a lot of those people will remember how kind you were to them. They will remember what it feels like to be wanted, needed, and respected. And that's what keeps people coming.
Right? It is leading with heart. And that's really, again, a hallmark of servant leadership is to understand why people behave the way they behave. And I use a performance equation, right? Performance in the end of the day is really 2 things. It's a technical skill, and it's the behavioral capacity that we bring to work. And that is the key message, I think, to the emerging leaders, is that if you want to climb that proverbial career ladder, you need to be that person who is agile and flexible and motivated and inspiring. So as to wrap up the conversation, and there's lots of great information here for the emerging manager, and really your ability to lead through example. There's a phenomenon as we call, leading is managed by walking around. I think you alluded to that a little bit. What would be your message to emerging leaders today on how to integrate that concept into their daily schedules that can be very, very busy and sometimes even task orientated? But I think it's exceptionally important to integrate that. What would your suggestion be on how to manage that time?
Sure, absolutely. So when I go and visit an account, the first thing I do is walk through the kitchen, say hello to all the staff. I'll check out the storerooms or things for whatever reason. If I know that there's been a challenge of that operation, I'll just look at that before I even go in and talk to the manager. So they know that from me, and I won't walk in and say, hey, your storeroom's dirty, or this isn't in order. If there's a paper on the floor, I'll pick it up, right? So it's just showing that you're part of the team, but also that you're keeping an eye out. So I just make that part of the daily jamba, if you will. Just walk in, and that's the first thing you do before you get down to business. Make sure everybody's safe, because that's obviously the most important, is that people don't get hurt at work. So you just make it part of your DNA. I know so many people that will walk right into work, go in an office, put down the book, turn on the computer, and never pick up their head for the day. That's telling everybody in that operation that you're not important enough for me to address you, to talk to you. So make it just a standard practice to go in and talk to folks. And then throughout the day, we get busy. We all have a job to do, right? But sometimes our teams are struggling, especially now with COVID. walk around, ask if there's something you can help with, ask them how they're doing. I think that's going to be an important part to keeping folks as well. And we do MBWA management by walking around. Back in 1990, when I joined this organization, that was a buzzword. We also had called method of the week. So every week you would focus on one practice and make sure that it became part of your DNA. And that was the focus for that week. And the next week would be a different focus and a different focus. But it's something that you've now had your hands on. You were able to do it firsthand and see it. And you'll realize that eventually it doesn't take any more time. It actually takes less time because then you have less interruptions when you go into your office. I think the key part is that as a manager in that location, in that department, in that office, whatever that setting might be, you should know everything going on before somebody above you calls you and said, what happened? And then you're like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I think that's the other part of it, that you know your operation when you do stuff like that. You're engaged. You know what's going on with your employees. You know who's have struggles, who may be leaving you. So many times I'll be in an operation and hear that somebody's leaving, and I just say, "Oh, I heard you're going to leave us. Can I ask why?" We end up having like a kind of mini exit interview, and a lot of times the person decides to stay after that. They just want to be heard. So having that people connection is really critical as a leader, because unless you plan on doing everything by yourself with your own hands, you got to have that team support behind you, and supporting them is a good start to being an engaging and strong leader.
Yeah. So I just want to, you mentioned it, I just want to re-emphasize that. So managing by walking around is not about being punitive, right? It's not about finding fault. It's really by being supportive. And I think that you alluded to the fact that, it is about safety, right? Safety is our first and foremost, and making it a priority of the day to do this. And I think that, as you say, maybe entering the building to the place where people are working, so you can have that supportive, moment before you get lost into the details. I think huddles, with your teams is another way of making sure you engage, but it's already a little bit more task oriented than having management walk around. In other words, having that personal touch time with the people, and it is so valuable, right? And we have seen too often when people go up on the career ladder and they get the different titles, the VP in front of the name, they always are too busy to do that. And I think if you want to learn and have a good finger on the pulse of the organization, we cannot forget where we came from. We cannot forget that this is really, really important to be seen. One of the suggestions I always make to my mentees is that as you walk around, carry little business cards with a little thank you, leave it on a keyboard when nobody is looking. It will have, or a handwritten card, it will have a greater impact. It will last longer, and that card will stick around. Part of motivating and inspiring our workforce, and those are all little things that are really, really important part of servant leadership. Pam, thank you very, very much for sitting on the side of the road, which is, I'm sure, dangerous sometimes. Thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure working with you and collaborating and discussing things. You should be very proud of what you have accomplished, and I think you're making a great example of a woman in leadership. That if you put your mind to it, you remain flexible, agile. You don't, you burst through, glass ceilings. And you tell them, listen, I'm equally as not better than anybody else, and that your world is your oyster in that sense. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to catching up with you in person now that COVID is past us. And any parting words of wisdom?
No, I just think that getting yourself a mentor is a great opportunity. I looked around and said, who do I emulate? Who do I really respect? And then have that conversation. I used to be afraid to talk to people above me, but they're people too. And I think they feel good about themselves when you're afraid to ask, because, close the door before you even turn the knob. But people may be very happy to mentor you. Some might say, I don't have the time, but really think about the person you want to be, the type of leader you want to be, and that's the person you want to try and find to be your mentor. And you'll go places, you'll go far. You create this whole network, you create a supportive platform. Don't ever be afraid to ask. Excellent.
I think it's very, very solid advice. Have a wonderful day. Good luck, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.
You too, Walter. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.